I have to find a way to do that a little quicker. Every time there's that little pause, the music goes down. If I keep the music up, then the music's annoying when I'm trying to talk. Anyway, welcome to the Dr. Sem Yankee Show and the Start Spreading the News podcast. As you know, for the last few months, these two shows have been one in the same. Now, I talked to EJ Fagan just the other day, and he said, when are we going to get back to doing the Start Spreading the News show? And I said, anytime, EJ, I'm ready. And he said, okay, after the WBC. He is big into the World Baseball Classic. I, less so. So as you know, this is the Dr. Sem Yankee Show. This is a part of the Start Spreading the News Yankee site, the greatest Yankee site there is. And as you know, this is also brought to you by the wonderful Artemisia Publishing. Artemisia has published numerous books that I wrote, including Scattering the Ashes, the least among them, Roy White's From Compton to the Bronx, 365.2, a motivational book, and coming out in just a few days, March the 17th, The Greatest New York Yankees by Uniform Number. I just got my copy, and it is beautiful. It looks great. There's pictures. Here's Ellie Howard and Dave Winfield. I don't want to spoil all the surprises, but you can find those books and many more across a variety of genres at apbooks.net. Let me just remind everyone to make each day a great day. How do you make your days great? You look around and you find the good that's in the world. You cherish that good in your heart, and then you spread it forward. If by some chance you can't find any good, well, then create some. Remember, when we give love, it comes back to us in greater amounts than we ever gave. Now, today, rather than talking Yankee baseball, we have a very special guest. Our very special guest is Tim Christ. Tim Christ just recently wrote a great new baseball book about Little League and the Little League World Series, and we're going to talk all about it right now. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Fantastic, Paul. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you reached out. And again, as I was saying before we went on, how patient you've been with me as I'm trying to juggle a whole bunch of things and get you on. So let's jump right into it. Tell us a little about yourself and who you are and what brings you here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, I live down in Bernie, Texas, which is just outside of San Antonio. It was our Bernie Little League team that went to the World Series back in summer of 2024. I've been in the business world, in the insurance business for, quarter decade now. And my 12-year-old, well, now he's 12. He'll turn 13 here in a week. But it was my 11-year-old son that was part of the team. So,
and that team, what did it do?
So we formed the Bernie Little League team. It was the spring of 2024. We played all regular season. We had our all-star tryouts. The 12 kids were selected. My son, even though he's 11, he was selected to play on that team as well. And then we played all summer long, June, July, August. We got it all the way to Williamsport in the Little League World Series. We got all the way to the U.S. Championship game. We beat Florida earlier that week. Then we beat Mountain, and then we played Florida again. They beat us. So unfortunately, we lost the U.S. Championship game, and then we played the consolation game against Venezuela the next day. And unfortunately, we came up a run short there as well. But so during the summer, we went 17-2, but we got it all the way to Williamsport, so we accomplished our goal.
Yeah, and you almost won it all. Now, I believe you said you went 17-2, and you mentioned the two losses. I believe you also won 17 games in a row. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
So tell us about the team and how you brought it all together. There's obviously Little League drama. Who are you going to pick? How do you pick the kids? And how do you then mold this diverse group of kids that just are coming together that summer into a team that can win 17 games in a row and make it all the way to the Williamsport Little League finals?
That's a really good question and a really big question. Almost all of our kids have played Little League for years growing up. Some of them also play some select ball here and there. But the impetus was, Bernie turns out quite a bit of really good baseball talent. So you look at a bunch of our high school kids, they go and play in college. Some of them, have actually even been drafted by the major leagues. We had Cole Phillips here a couple of years ago that got drafted by the Braves. He was throwing 100 miles an hour when he was 17 years old. And so it was just interesting that you've got such really, really good talent with Bernie baseball, but you didn't really have that with Bernie Little League, right? So we kind of had this disconnect. So our general manager, Justin Newsom, kind of had this idea in the back of his head for years. He was talking to some of the parents about it. But obviously, as many people know, there is some drama involved in Little League with all-star selection and who gets to play on that team and which board member and which dad is sitting on the board and that kind of thing. And so they said, we had a new president come in a couple of years ago, Chris Carey. And so really he came from Abilene. And so when the two of those guys got together, it was really, we've got a shared respect for the game. We've got obviously a shared respect for just developing kids in general. And so let's try to, put this thing together and make a run of it. Right. And so we started talking to everybody back in the fall, said, hey, let's do this thing the right way. Let's make sure everybody plays Little League in the spring. We'll do the all-star tryouts. And then, out of the, several hundred kids that we have that play Bernie Little League, we'll select the best 12 and we'll make a run of it. And so, like I said, that's what we did. So ultimately the 12 of us that got selected, we all got broken up during the season. So there was 2 or 3 really good kids per, the Little League team during the season. We played our 14 games. And of course, it's typical Little League, right? Where the 2 or 3 kids that were really, really good, they'd get hits and then we'd have a bunch of walks or outs or whatever. And then, some of the games would be pretty lopsided one way or the other, but it's just part of what you put up with Little League. And we still had a good time, but we put so we had all-star tryout day, all the kids came out and tried out for the team, and then they had selections. Then the coaches were voted on. And so ultimately this team came together. We started doing practices after that selection process was complete, because obviously we didn't play games for, about 3 weeks or so. And then we were confident because we knew we had a squad of really good kids and some fairly sizable kids. So, I'll tell you, the families and the kids on our team were just fantastic. The kids are, they're typical 12-year-olds, right? They can be funny, they can be sad, they can be silly, all within 10 minutes of each other, but they are all really, really good kids at the end of the day. They all got really, really good hearts, and they're all really good athletes. And so we went to our first district game about an hour away, and we're scared to death, right? Because that old line of baseball game is just a nervous breakdown divided into 9 innings. The kids had never played a game before, and so we're like, well, let's go see how this goes. And we did really, really well. We run ruled all 3 games in district and won by large margins. And so we were like, okay, hey, now we've settled the nerves a little bit, right? We'll keep this train running. But, of course, you go from district to section, and then you got to play a bunch of other teams. And so we did really, really good in section, and that was interesting. And then we went to state, and it got a little better with the competition. So we won, but that was the first time that we didn't win, by run rule. And so all of a sudden we're like, okay, now the nerves are back. But we ultimately ended up winning both of those games by a fairly sizable margin. And then we got to go to Waco for regionals, and it got really tight. So we played, Arkansas and Louisiana, and those teams played us really, really tough. And those were much closer games, single digits divided us, and some very timely hitting, especially with that second Louisiana game, ultimately ended up. But so we beat Louisiana, and that was a Tuesday evening. Then they sat us down. They said, congratulations on winning regionals. Your kids are on an airplane Friday morning going to Williamsport.
Wow.
So, holy cow. Here we go.
Now, when you got to Williamsport, I believe you stayed in dormitories, right? Like the kids got a little taste to be college kids like? What was that like?
Yeah, that's fantastic. They it was funny when we're sitting there that night, Tuesday evening there in Waco. They said, your kids are on an airplane Friday morning. You're basically going to turn them over to us for the next 3.5 weeks. But don't worry, we run this thing like a Swiss knife, Swiss Army clock, and we've got it covered. So yeah, all the kids get to stay in a place called the International Grove, which is basically a bunch of quads. So you've got 20 teams from obviously all over the world that all come together. It's all behind high fences. It's got, lanyards, to get badged in, badged out. It's super secure. Like no kid ever gets lost, thank God. Yeah, the kids, the coaches stay there too. The parents don't stay in there though, but the coaches get to stay there. And so there's some semblance of, adult supervision, but the kids for the most part have the run of that area, right? They get to go play. There's a sport court outside. They've got an indoor game room that's got ping pong and a bunch of, MLB The Show video games on a couple of TVs, and some, what I call, the old school ping pong games on the wall. And so they get the run of the place. They get to hang out for the 3.5 weeks when they're not playing baseball. They're playing in that area unless they're hanging out with, watching some of the other games. So they got to, and there's a cafeteria, of course, where they feed them and whatnot. So it's, they definitely get to feel like big leaguers for a while. And like I said, have quite a bit of freedom for being 12 years old.
That's amazing. So do the teams intermingle? Do the kids get to see kids from other teams and other parts of the world in this complex?
Oh, absolutely. So the quads are basically they're 2-story buildings. So there's 4 teams per building. So in our building, it was Venezuela, Japan, and then Southeast Florida. So
wow.
These kids are all within close proximity of each other. The showers are, communal facilities. And so there's a lot of interaction that goes on. So, there was one Japanese kid that spoke a little bit of English, but otherwise the kids are all using their phones with Google Translate to talk back and forth to each other. So it's translating into Spanish for the Venezuela team, and it's translating into Japanese for the Japan team. And then, of course, the other quads had the other teams in there as well. But yeah, our boys got to play a whole lot with the Florida kids, with the Japanese kids, and also with the Venezuela kids. So that's a really cool multicultural experience for those.
That's what a great learning experience. Did your son get to make any friends that he still keeps in touch with across from Venezuela or Japan or South Florida?
We swapped phone numbers and email addresses with a few of the kids. So yeah, there's some of that that goes back and forth.
Oh, that's awesome.
But obviously with the language barrier, it's a little bit challenging with the international kids. But
100%. But what an opportunity, as I said, to have a chance to see how other cultures play baseball, how they interact, how they play games, even. I once went to Japan, 2012. And it was an educator's tour. And one night you got to stay with a host family. Instead of staying in a hotel, you stayed at a family's house. And they did not speak much English. And I didn't speak any Japanese. But he had a baseball glove. And I said, "You play?" And he's like, "Yeah." And the best part of, there was a really great experience anyway. But I think the best part of my visit to their house was the father of the family and I went into the alley behind the house and just had a catch. You don't need words for any of that.
That's so right. Tim, speak the common language of sports.
That's correct. You wrote a book, yes?
I did. Yeah, we were. It was such an incredible experience. And I've written a couple of books in the past, but they've always been business books. And I just was like, this is something we want to be able to tell our grandkids about, right? Caleb's kids, ultimately, at some point in time, the whole community showed out for this thing. And so I was like, you know what, before my memory leaves me, let me try to put this into a book. And I remember, I'm sure you've read it, years ago, I read, Moneyball. And so it was like, I'm kind of an analytical guy. And so it was like, how do you take, a group of, what they called them misfit toys, right? In Moneyball, the Oakland A's, and turn them into a team that won so many games and won the pennant several times, and then gets into the playoffs. And so I look at it the same way, right? So how do you take a group of kids in Little League, or really a group of kids from 2 or 3 or 4 years old, and create a team at 12 years old that can get to this grand global stage and show off their talents? And it's really, at the end of the day, it's there's nothing. I say this very carefully. While we love our kids, there's nothing special about our kids. They are all just normal kids that have had a lot of practice at baseball over the lot of years. And so, I make the joke that, but it's the truth. At 7 years old, Caleb couldn't catch a fly ball over his shoulder. But in the last 5 years, he's gotten really, really good from after T-ball. And so the idea was, like I said, really a Moneyball book was like, let's write a, what I call a creative nonfiction, right? So it's a historical nonfiction book, talks about our journey, but then it's combined with a how-to. And so I included a whole bunch of statistics in the book because, number one, I love statistics, but number two, I think especially for parents and coaches and whatnot that are trying to help develop their teams and whatnot, the challenge when you read books or listen to some podcasts is they don't ever give you great measurement tools about are your kids really good or are they not really good at this particular age? So I'm like, you know what? We're going to bare our souls here. We're going to put all the statistics for the kids in the book and say, here's how good they were at 12 years old. And here's a little bit about how good they were as they've come up through the ranks. That way, everybody knows this is absolutely achievable by, 10 years old, or 11 years old, 12 years old. And so it starts to really give you a good frame of reference. And so if if you're a dad out there, with your kid and, he's pitching sometimes and he's throwing, 50% strike percentage, and you say, hey, well, we know we need to get to 60, or ideally we'd get to 65%. All that means is we need more practice. So we just go out there an extra time or two a week, right? It's not complicated. But once you see that they get to that average of 65%, sometimes they'll throw 70% or 72%, and some of their days they'll throw 61 or 62. But once their average comes to 65 or 66, then you can be like, hey, you know what? We've gotten you kind of right where we need to be. You know, I mean, Nolan Ryan's lifetime percentage was 65%, right? So like there's a lot of these bellwether numbers in our head that we sort of, those are the mile markers and the milestones that we put out there to say, this is what our ultimate goal to achieve is. And so I put all those statistics in the book about, you know, exactly how the kids performed in the different games and over the course of the season, because that way everybody can understand it. Everybody can measure their own performance against it. And then, like I said, they can set goals for themselves and say, hey, we know this is achievable. And so let's work our butts off to get to this next level. And if your kid's currently batting 250, well, let's work really hard and let's have maybe a 280, you know, goal for the remainder of the season, right? And then next year we'll maybe take it up to 300 or 320, and we'll just slowly stair step them, right? I mean, I tell everybody this is not a short-term game, right? This is a long-term process. If your kid's decent at 7 years old from Little League and a whole lot of energy and development for the next 5 years, they can absolutely be batting over 400, you know, average by the time they're 12 years old. Takes 5 years to do it, though. I mean, they might be doing it by 10 and a half or 11, depending on how much practice you put into it. But you can absolutely measure that over time, and especially with the technological tools that are available these days. I mean, we all love Game Changer because it gives you, you know, everything they did all the time. So all these cool tools exist. But yeah, so I wrote the book, put all the stats in there, and it's like, you know, I said, here's how we did it. It's a great keepsake for the community. Lets everybody know, you know, obviously, I mean, it's a history-making thing, right? I mean, there's only, you know, we were the 28th team from Texas to make it to the Little League World Series in 75 years. And so, you know, it's something pretty historic. It's now a written record. We've got all the stats, hopefully to give everybody else the inspiration to, we can do the same thing with our kids. Let's just get after it and put a plan together and execute.
Yeah, I love the idea of small steps. I retired from marathon running, but I ran 27 marathons. But
wow.
Before I ever ran a marathon, I had a friend who has since passed, but I had a friend who had run the New York City Marathon a couple of times. And I said to him, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you can run 26.2 miles. It's crazy. And he goes, you just take it in steps. And maybe a summer after that, I said, you know, if I could just run 10 miles, that'll be pretty good. I could say I ran 10 miles one time. And so I put my mind to it and I got up to 10 miles and I completed a 10-mile run. And then I saw him and I said, I'm not in your league, but I just did 10 miles. Pretty good. And he goes, if you can run, this is sort of what you were just saying, just about running. If you can run 10 miles, you can run a marathon. And I said,
100%.
but that doesn't make any sense. I'd have to do it again. And then another 6.2. And he goes, yeah, but if you can run 10, the next time out, you can maybe run 11 or 12. And if you can run 12, you can do 13. That's a half marathon. And if you can do 13, you can do 15. And if you can do 15, you can do 16. If you can do 16, you can do 18. And then you just start realizing like, yeah, it's all about steps, small steps going forward. Some days you can't do it. Some days you might have run a 15-miler the week before, and then the next week you go out and you can't even make it to 4. And you're like, oh man, what happened? But then the next week you do 16 or whatever. Like, you can't let those small setbacks get in your way. And you say it's just all about progression each day. So you're throwing strikes 50% of the time. You go out there, you really have that drive. You want to keep pitching. You want to keep getting better. Next thing you know, you're throwing strikes 55% of the time, as you said. And if then you give the nice numbers to let them know, anybody who reads the book, what the benchmarks are. So if you think you're going to be good enough to have a player or a team be Little League World Series quality, you've got to be throwing strikes 65% of the time. That's the idea. And I think that's great information. And I think it's a great motivator, right? Because the idea is we can all get better. So I think that's great. And I love how you call it creative nonfiction, where it's obviously it's a true story, but you found ways to be creative. So where is the book? What's it called? And when's it come out, or how can we get a copy?
Yeah, so it's how Bernie made history and played in their field of dreams. We're finalizing a couple things with publishing at the moment. Expected to be out within the month or so. Super excited. Pretty much right in time for between spring training and opening day, and then obviously Little League starting here fairly quickly. We're looking to have it up, hopefully early this spring, and then carry it into the summer and kind of distribute it from there. But yeah, I mean, I think to your point about the running thing, it's like you said, it's funny. I say it's funny after, when we're all 50 years old, everything's funny at this point, right? We've all lived enough. I used to do triathlons. And so, yeah, to your point, that first time, when they say to run for an hour, you're like, oh my God, I can never run for an hour. But once you can run for an hour, what you realize is you actually you don't have to, you're not catching your breath anymore. It's at a pace that you can maintain. And if you can maintain a running pace for an hour, you can slow back a little bit, and then you could, like, to exactly your point, you can easily run 11 or 12. It's not like you're running 10 and then you're just dropping dead from sheer exhaustion. And so then it's just, you build a program and a system, right? I mean, so in our training, we do 3 weeks of progressive incremental, and then that fourth week is a recovery week. So we back off when we do 80%. And then that next week, when we come back, that week 5, it's 10% more than week 3. And it's a system, right? And so, you can't, to your point, you can't go from 0 to a marathon runner in a month, but you can absolutely do it in 6 months. And so commit yourself to the long-term goal. And I think too, that's a big piece with these kids. And, actually, I think, credit Mid-Atlantic, who we played the first game there in Williamsport. They were the third place team in their regional tournament when they were 10, but playing in the 12U division. The next year when they came back and they were 11-year-olds, they got second in that same tournament. The third year, when they turned 12 years old, they won their regional tournament, and that took them to the Little League World Series. And so there are a number of little leagues around the country that build into kind of this multi-year planning program, right? They talk about it with the kids, and I always make the joke. There's another book out called Little Big Men that Gary Eagle wrote about the 2002 Little League World Series when the kids from Kentucky won the whole thing. Well, the kids from Kentucky beat the kids from Fort Worth, which obviously is in Texas, so it's a near and dear to our heart. But what's crazy about that game is the kids, from Fort Worth, like, they've all heard that story 100 times now growing up, right? There was this team from Fort Worth that went to the Little League World Series in 2002, and they've told that story for the last 23 years. And of course, a lot of things have changed. You're a big baseball guy. Those 2 pitchers in that game, one of them threw 124 pitches and one of them threw 118 pitches at 12 years old. And we wouldn't even think about letting our kids do that today. But obviously the rules were different. We had different ideas around pitch counts and limits and whatnot. And of course, that's not even close to, like, Nolan Ryan's throwing 166 or 216 pitches in a game. But yeah, it's just a system and a program you put together over time, right? And so you put a multi-year plan together and say, hey, we're just going to get, and we use the phrase 1% better every day, right? That's all we care about. We get 1% better every day. And every day we go and put focus and intentionality into our development. And as long as we feel like we accomplished it, it's amazing what happens over the course of a single season, whether it's a fall or spring. You see kids get so much better. And then as they get better, their confidence improves. And as their confidence improves, then they're more motivated to want to continue to practice and get better. And it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. It's funny. I mean, Caleb, now he's almost 13, but we played this past weekend, and he said, hey, Dad, we didn't play until 2:00 in the afternoon. So all morning he's like, Dad, when are we going to go to the cage? I'm like, Bud, we go to the cages 2 hours before the game. He said, well, let's go at 11 instead of 12. So he was like pushing me to want to go hit at 11 o'clock in the morning, 3 hours before game time. So I was like, I compromised. We went 2.5 hours early. But I mean, that's what happens with these kids once they get fired up and energized about whatever it is they like to do and get focused on. And the interesting thing about sports is the better you get at it, the more you like it. So I always tell parents, you can't get your kid involved in Little League or really any athletic activity. Let them play it for, 9 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever, and then that be over and done with. They're not going to be that good that first time out of the box. They need to play it for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then they start to kind of get a sense of their world, right? So we did the thing, and I mean, you're you got to have a church there in Wyckoff. So Catholic Youth Organization does this youth sports program where you play fall flag football, winter basketball, spring t-ball, summer soccer, and summer basketball. We played that circuit with Caleb for 4 years. And so every 9 weeks, we're doing some different sport, right? And so in between those, we'd go practice all of them all the time. And so he gets a little better every year, but by age 5 and 6 when he's been playing that a couple of years. Well, in basketball, he would go get the rebound and he would just run immediately down the court and make an easy layup. And the rest of the kids are still at the other side of the court waiting for the rebound. Like, we had just developed the training into him and the quickness of, here's what you do exactly when you get the ball, right? And so it's a multi-year effort of developing these kids, fast twitch muscles and everything else. But once you kind of build that competitiveness into them and the understanding of how to play the game, then it's just off to the races. And it just becomes so much fun from a parenting perspective to just watch them flourish and then just help them continue to, to get better and better.
That's great. Now, I do want to get to this because you have a part of your book where it talks about the kids coming home. They say you can never go home again, but what was it like when the kids returned home?
Yeah, so that, everything was a whirlwind. I say that, interestingly enough, Williamsport is basically it's like Disney World, but for baseball, right? There's not a blade of grass out of place. It's beautiful. That Kentucky bluegrass, it just is lush, and the whole place is just absolutely just perfect. It's like a fairy tale. But we finished playing on that Sunday against Venezuela, and then the kids are on a flight home on Monday, and so time stood still, or felt like it stood still, for those 3 weeks. I couldn't, it felt like we were there for a year and a half, and then it also felt like we were there for like 10 minutes. All right, it's just kind of a crazy, weird feeling, but. We ended up flying back home Sunday night. The kids flew back home Monday. So they land at San Antonio Airport. The San Antonio firefighters got 2 fire trucks that are dumping streams of water on the airplane as they taxi off the tarmac up to the gate. The Delta pilot comes on. He's like, "That's the coolest thing I've ever seen in 35 years, is to get this shower of affection." So the kids get parked. Of course, all the news crews are there to interview the kids and stream it as they come off the plane. They jump in a bunch of vehicles that are supplied by the local car dealerships, and they get a police escort out to Bernie, which, I know you visited out here. So it's, 25, 30 minutes from the airport. In a police escort, though, it takes you about 15 minutes. So now the boys are, super spoiled. They're like, that's the only way to travel. And we said, well, yeah, as long as you're in the front of the police car, not in the back of the police car.
Yes.
But yeah, they came out to Bernie. There was a big parade set up, so the kids all got to parade down the square, and then everybody came into Main Plaza. The mayor and a bunch of other local officials, praised them and had some words of appreciation. And there was probably 1,000, 1,500 people that turned out just to get more signatures from the kids, just to get pictures with the kids. They're now celebrities in the town. Even now, it's a year and a half later, we can't go anywhere really, even in Texas, and without people recognizing who he is. They're like, "Oh, you're that kid."
And the book will do even more.
He still gets requests for autograph and pictures and whatnot. So it's it's crazy. They've got a whole new level of fame.
That's awesome. Now, how many of the kids on the team have the ambition or the dream of one day playing pro ball? Is that what they're all looking to do, or do some of them thinking they want to do other things? What's the general at 13 years old? What are they thinking?
At 13 years old, they've all got their lives all perfectly planned out, right? No, there's a split. There's some kids that still would probably rather be professional football players. There's some kids that definitely believe baseball is going to be their game of choice. There's other kids that are just super excited about track or cross country. So it's a little bit of a mix. I'd say it's, we probably, out of the 4 or 5 sports that, most of the kids play, it's probably almost equally divided. 2 or 3 kids per sport is probably about how it plays out. And, it could be that a few of the kids develop, hopefully obviously into multi-sport athletes, right? We'd love to have another Bo Jackson or, Michael Jordan or whatever, come from Bernie. But yeah, no, there's a few of them. Julian Hurst for sure, the star pitcher that you saw that played, pitched a bunch of those games. He definitely has the desire to go all the way. Caleb's got that desire to go all the way as well. So we're actively encouraging and building the plan for, okay, if that's your goal, here's how we achieve it.
That's great. You seem like a wonderful coach, a wonderful person, a great leader in your community, a great leader for the kids. So I think I compliment you on all of those things. So let's just take a couple of moments here.
We can't put a little caveat in there though yet, right? They have not turned out that way yet. So it's they're good to this point, but the rest of the story is not written. So of
course, well, it's for all of us, right? Even at our age, the rest of the story is not written. And the idea is to keep writing it, right? Keep finding ways to make our lives better lives and kinder lives. And hopefully continue to set goals in our own lives and do great things. So
That's right.
You're in Bernie, just outside San Antonio. The Astros and the Rangers are the hometown teams. How does that break out? You have mostly Ranger fans, Astro fans. What is it like out there?
It's an even split. I think, there's some people, back when we had the Oilers for football, there was definitely a bunch of Oiler fans, but there's a lot of Cowboys fans. There are some folks that have adopted the Texans as well. But I'd say it's probably slightly more shaded Astros. Although obviously the Rangers have been good the last few years too, right? So it's fun to have two really good teams to get to root for. And actually, this past weekend, the college games that we went to on Friday night were actually played in Dakin Park there in Houston. And so we got to see some of the college kids hit some home runs off that left field wall that comes in. So it's a whole lot of fun. But yeah, the Astros are obviously a great team. We had, definitely got to credit even the Yankees organization too, had so many wonderful things to say about the kids. And, we got to watch the Yankees came and played in that Little League Classic game that happens there in Williamsport. But we got a bunch of video messages from Ranger players. We got a bunch of video messages from the Astros players. And so the kids just ate all that up. We got a bunch of video messages from the college coaches and, some of the high school coaches around the area. So, Jim Schlossnagel, that used to be the head coach for Texas A&M. Now he's a head coach for University of Texas. He sent a video message. He actually knows Caleb now because we've gone to several of the UT games. And so now it's like, hey, Caleb, how are you doing? And it's like, hey, coach. So it's a whole nother level. And, we had Jace Lavallee that just got drafted. He played for Texas A&M. One of our players, is a big A&M fan. So he had said, hey, that's my favorite player. So when he was up to bat one time, they showed Jace Laviolette, it being his favorite player. So Jace Laviolette's watching the games. He took a picture of that and then posted it on his Twitter page and said, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen, that, somebody just, looks up to me that way. And it was, and it showed a picture, like his Twitter page was like of him hitting a home run or something. So he had those two pictures superimposed on each other. But the outpouring of support from really the entire Texas community was just absolutely incredible the entire summer. And it was just a whole different level. And it's been such a blessing just to be a part of that and experience all that firsthand.
It's amazing. Show us the book again.
Sure.
Oh, it looks great. Really terrific. I can't wait till it comes out. When it comes out, send me the picture of the cover and a little blurb or a part of a chapter, and we'll put it on Start Spreading the News and a link to where we can get it and where the readers can pick it up. And hopefully we help you sell a whole bunch of books, because it's a great story. And the way you've incorporated so many great other pieces of baseball and youth development and setting goals, I think it's going to be a big hit. And I can't thank you enough for sharing it with us.
No, my pleasure. Like I said, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, hopefully it's a joy and a tool that everybody gets to use to, help their own kids, continue to get better. So,
Tim, you're awesome. I'm going to wrap the show up. I'm going to put you in the background again, but don't go away. It's like, when you're on those game shows, stay back and we'll give you the parting gifts. I don't have any parting gifts, but we can talk for a minute. Let me just wrap the show up. Tim, thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
And
I cut you off too. Say it again.
Oh, no, I was just saying, thank you, Paul. And I thank you guys to the Yankee fans. Like I said, the Yankees organization, when they flew in for that MLB Little League Classic game, they just hung out with the kids all day, signed autographs. It was, it was like Christmas for the kids to hang out with Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and DJ LeMahieu and all those guys. So,
and I wish Juan Soto was still a Yankee, but that's another story. Thank you so much, Tim. All right, my friends, how about that? What a great story. Tim Christ and the story of the 2004 Little League World Champion, runner-up to World Champion team from Bernie, Texas, spelled Boerne or something like that. And when you go out there, you think, oh, I want to go to the town of Bourne. And then you get out there and they say, no, it's Bernie. It's pronounced Bernie. As a Yankee fan, that was easy to remember because I just thought about Bernie Williams. Thank you for watching. This has been the Dr. Sem Yankee Show, and this is the Start Spreading the News Yankees podcast. Have yourselves a wonderful day. And remember, be kind, share kindness, share love. When we give love, it comes back to us in greater amounts than we ever gave.